Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and since Star Wars The Last Jedi released a teaser a couple months back, we've been getting a ton of new, interesting details about this movie. Not just the new characters and story details, but kinda crazy theories and what kind of tone this movie will have. Who's kissing who? Who's sleeping with who? There's all kinds of crazy hot goss. So I'm gonna update you on everything we know about The Last Jedi so far. And even though there's so much we still don't know about this movie, if you don't wanna know anything about this movie and just wanna go in completely blind, there could be some potential spoilers ahead, so you've been warned. Okay, so let's start with the characters. Writer-director Rian Johnson said that he started with a list of all the characters in the movie, and then he came up with the most difficult struggles that each of those characters would have to go through. So let's look at all the returning characters from The Force Awakens. Luke Skywalker and Rey seem like they're gonna be the main focus of this film, at least according to the teaser in the way that The Force Awakens left off. So we know that Luke will be mentoring and kind of training Rey, but Rian Johnson says it won't be exactly like the Jedi training that we've seen in past films, like with Yoda and Luke in Empire Strikes Back. Daisy Ridley has said that Rey meeting Luke will be similar to people who meet their heroes, where it's impossible for them to live up to their expectations. So she's probably expecting Luke to be the hero from legend, the Jedi pilot who blew up the Death Star and defeated Darth Vader and kissed a princess who ended up being his sister. But then when this fangirl comes up to him, Luke is just like, ugh, sorry kid. That ain't me no more. Get off my ocean rock. Meanwhile, Mark Hamill has described his character as a failure. And we know that his force training of his nephew, Ben Solo, who became Kylo Ren, ended in a disaster. In fact, that disaster might be what we're seeing in that shot in the teaser with Luke and R2-D2 in front of a burning Jedi temple. That could be a flashback. This whole tragedy is probably part of the reason he said,
"It's time for the Jedi to end."
And I'm predicting that when we see Rey holding out the lightsaber to Luke, he might actually refuse it. It sounds like we'll also get an answer to that question set up in the opening crawl of The Force Awakens. Where has Luke been? Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, said that in the way that Episode 7 was in a lot of ways Han Solo's story, Episode 8 will be Luke's story. So we're gonna find out what exactly he's doing on this island on the planet ahch-to, where apparently we now know an ancient Jedi temple is located. Meanwhile, Rey will deepen her Jedi training. Behind the scenes footage shows Daisy Ridley with some mad lightsaber skills. And apparently The Last Jedi will shed more light on the mystery of Rey's parentage. Rian Johnson said that the movie will address that mystery, but he cut himself off before he went any further.
It will be addressed, but there won't be clarification.
It depends on... I can't say it. I was about to say something. You almost got me.
I'm thinking who's about to say depends on what you mean by clarification. So I'm predicting that we'll learn more about Rey's origin, but that answer will set up an even deeper mystery. Okay, moving on. We also know that General Leia Organa will be a big part of this movie. Now, just to be clear, Carrie Fisher did finish shooting all of her scenes for this movie. However, according to Kennedy, Leia was going to be an even bigger part of Episode 9, like it was going to go Han's movie for Episode 7, Luke's movie for Episode 8, and then Leia's movie for Episode 9. But since she passed away, that movie is undergoing extensive rewrites. But for this movie, in the teaser, we saw Leia looking at a holo display on board a Resistance ship, which I pointed out in my teaser breakdown could be the Mon Calamari flagship Home 1. I say that because that's Admiral Akbar in the background there. Also in the shot, you can see Ken Lung's character from The Force Awakens, Admiral Yuo Statura. Now, another returning character will be Poe Dameron. A quick shot in the teaser showed him with BB-8 on a Resistance base as it was under attack. We also know that at some point he gets in an argument with Leia and she slaps him. According to Oscar Isaac, they did this take 27 times.
And every time she'd hit like a different spot in my face.
And that brings us to the guy that Poe shares jackets with, Finn. According to John Boyega, Finn is still recovering from the nasty lightsaber wound that Kylo gave him in The Force Awakens. And now Boyega says that Finn is in a ahch-to suit. In fact, that's probably what we saw him in the teaser. In our breakdown, I pointed out that the Arabic letters here translate to stable. Now, I'm not totally sure if a ahch-to suit, in Boyega's words, is different from a ahch-to tank, like what we've seen Luke and Vader use. Maybe suit means it's more portable. I also pointed out in the teaser that the flashing blue light on the edges of the frame look like this tank/suit could be traveling through hyperspace. Anyway, apparently Finn will be going on a side adventure with a new character who I'll get to in a second. But next, there's Kylo Ren. Now, we don't know much about how Kylo will respond to to his defeat in The Force Awakens, we know that he now has a sick face scar, and he was able to retrieve his lightsaber despite seemingly losing it in The Force Awakens. We also saw this mysterious shot of his crushed helmet smoking. Now, we also now know from the Vanity Fair photo shoot that General Hux and Captain Phasma will also be returning. Phasma actually appeared briefly in the teaser as well, and I'm predicting she'll be the one leading the First Order's assault on the Resistance base. And I'm sure Chewie, R2, and 3PO will show up as well, but for now, let's move on to the new characters. So, Kelly Marie Tran will be joining the cast as Rose. She is a maintenance worker for the Resistance, and she'll be the character who's joining Finn as they head to Canto Bight. That's a new casino planet. So my prediction is that Rose is the Resistance worker who's responsible for carting around Finn's bacta suit as he's in a coma. And when the First Order fleet shows up, she has to escape with Finn and get him to safety, which will lead to all kind of fun hijinks between these two. We also know that Vietnamese actress Veronica Ngo will be playing Rose's sister Paige, who's a Resistance pilot in training. Then Laura Dern is also going to be in The Last Jedi. She's playing Resistance officer Vice Admiral Holdo. She wears this elaborate, posh costume with a violet wig, and her character appears on Canto Bight. She's part of this wealthy elite class. And before I talk about this new society, one last new cast member is a mysterious villain played by Benicio del Toro. Now, this guy apparently didn't even get a name in the script. Rian Johnson refers to him as DJ for a reason that he won't tell anyone. And some are speculating that he's the guy who runs Canto Bight the way that Lando Calrissian ran Cloud City. Or maybe DJ refers to him being the disc jockey of the galaxy, controlling the rhythm and the timing and deciding when exactly to drop the beat. Guys, I think we're looking at Snoke. Just 1 second, I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat. Okay, let's move on to the planets and locations in The Last Jedi. The exciting new planet that people have been talking about is Canto Bight. It's the casino planet. Rian Johnson actually described it as a playground for rich assholes. It's meant to kind of be a refuge vacation spot for the upper class in the galaxy to kick back and unwind while the war goes on around them. Pablo Hidalgo from Lucasfilm described this society as a class of wealthy that have helped to build all sorts of loopholes in society that will always ensure that they'll survive or thrive no matter what else is happening out there. And this is interesting because Canto Bight looks like the first Star Wars location that we've seen after the Galactic Civil War has broken out that is completely removed from political or military conflict. Like even Mos Eisley Cantina and Cloud City were eventually dragged into the war. So I'll be curious to see how Finn responds to all these rich snobs who can afford to live inside a bubble and not really care at all about the Galactic War. Now, another new location is the planet Crate. We saw a quick shot of Crate in the teaser. Rian Johnson described it as a remote, uncharted planet with lots of mines on it. And that might be why the dust underneath the desert surface is bright red. It could be the minerals in the soil that have been oxidized. Anyway, I love the vibrant color palette for this planet. It's nothing like anything we've seen before in a Star Wars movie. And of course, we know that a major battle will take place on this location. We also know that the Resistance base on Dakar will show up at least in the first act of the film. In fact, it looks like there will be a space battle above this planet's surface with Resistance frigates forming a blockade formation against a fleet of TIE fighters. And considering this is the only space battle that we've seen any shots of, this might be what we pan to after the opening crawl of the movie. And as I mentioned before, another place that we'll see more of is Luke's planet of ahch-to. Rian Johnson described this island as a kind of Jedi village, and that Luke has been living in this village among an indigenous race of caretaker creatures. And he was super secretive, but he joked that they weren't Ewoks. But I'm curious to know what this race is and why Johnson is being so mysterious about it. Like, it could be that this race will be Yoda's species, something that's always been a big mystery in the Star Wars universe. Then again, I've always kind of preferred Yoda being this unknown mystery figure. Okay, let's talk quickly about the new ships and weapons that we know about in The Last Jedi. So of course, there's the inclusion of the A-Wing starfighter. We saw quick glimpses of the A-Wing in the Resistance hangar and in that big space battle. Now remember, we saw A-Wings in Return of the Jedi, and there's also these new Resistance fighters that we saw in the shots on Crate. They kind of look like B-Wings, but they aren't. They're a new kind of land speeder that flies close to the ground with these low-lying anchor pieces that drop down to kick up this red dust. In my breakdown, I speculated that they're doing that to form this kind of visibility shield to make them harder to target. And these things that they're flying toward is a new type of First Order walker called guerrilla walkers. And they're called that because they're a lot larger and they have bigger, sturdier front arms. Okay, finally, I want to touch on some of the deeper theories that have come up about The Last Jedi. Jedi. First, big one, what does The Last Jedi refer to? Now, one of the most interesting developments is that the Jedi in the title might refer to more than one Jedi. In fact, the Spanish translation of the title revealed that it is indeed plural, but no one from the movie or Lucasfilm have confirmed this yet. So it's possible that The Last Jedi isn't just Luke, it could be Luke, Rey, and or dozens of other characters like the last colony of Jedi. Now, why does Luke say that it's time for the Jedi to end? Now, one theory that I brought up before is that Luke could be a gray Jedi. Now, a gray Jedi is an obscure concept from the Star Wars universe that refers to Jedi who are on the border between the light and the dark side of the Force. It also refers to Jedi who operate outside of the Jedi Order. And the idea here is that Luke, after learning how his father could come back from the dark side and how the old Jedi dogma kind of failed him when he tried to teach them to bend, all this might end up with Luke having mixed feelings about the Force, seeking a new, open-minded, less binary worldview that would require the old tradition of the Jedi, as he sees it, to end. Now, another theory centers around those old books that show up in the teaser. These pages contain the symbol of the Jedi Order, and some people are saying that these books could be the ancient Journal of the Wills. Now, the Wills are from George Lucas's original script for A New Hope. He imagined the story of Star Wars to be an old legend recorded by an advanced alien race called the Wills. And this story that takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away are recorded in their journal. Now, this was an idea that Lucas removed from his screenplay draft, but ever since Chirrut and Baze in Rogue One were considered guardians of the Wills, the theory is that now the whole concept of Wills are being brought back into Star Wars as part of the origin of the Force. So maybe by seeking or decoding this Journal of the Wills, Luke will begin to finally understand the true nature of the Force and how the Jedi tradition misinterpreted that truth. So now that Luke will understand it's time to move beyond the Jedi. And another related theory involves the idea of Force trees. Now, I've gone into the backstory of Force-sensitive trees in my teaser breakdown, but when you look even more closely at the teaser, this cave that Luke is inside kind of looks like it's the inside of a tree trunk. Like, notice the wall behind the bookshelf has this wooden root texture, which is similar to the surfaces around Luke as he stands in the portal at the end of the teaser. This could be all part of the same interior location that Luke lives inside, which might be the ancient Jedi temple, which was built inside of a tree like the Keebler elves. But instead of baking delicious cookies, Luke is using this tree to meditate and deepen his understanding of the Force. Now again, that's just a delicious theory. But one last theory that I've been playing around with, which I kind of like, is something that I noticed when I rewatched the first part of the teaser. It's interesting that Rey's right hand suddenly drops into frame, and it's kind of a jump scare. Now, if this movie is truly about Rey trying to follow in Luke's footsteps, maybe the second chapter of this trilogy will end with Rey suffering a similar fate that Luke did in Empire, losing her right hand. And yeah, I know that's kind of crazy and also kind of like too neat and predictable and convenient, but if it ends up happening, it'll be crazy to go back and see this all being foreshadowed in our first ever look at The Last Jedi. Now, I go deeper into some of these theories and a lot of other interesting missable details in my breakdown of The Last Jedi teaser, so make sure to go watch that. But the most important thing to know is that The Last Jedi is probably going to be really good. Everyone who's read Rian Johnson's script has had good things to say about it. They love the weird new choices Johnson has made and how dark the movie gets, but also how really fun and true to Star Wars it is. And Force Awakens director J.J. Abrams said that after reading the script, he said that he wished he had written it himself, and I think that's a good sign. So do you think The Last Jedi will deepen the mythology of the Force and the Jedi and Luke in a way that feels satisfying? Or do you have any concerns that they're tinkering with our precious pseudo-religion? Also, now that we know that Leia's story is being rewritten for episode 9, what do you think that the original plan for her character was going to be? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're into this kind of thorough, know-it-all-y explanations of Star Wars stuff, please like this video and share it around, and we'll make more videos answering any other question that you might have about Star Wars. And be sure to subscribe to New Rockstars to stay up to date on all the in-depth Star Wars coverage that we do on this channel. You can also be more part of our team here by contributing to us on Patreon. Big thanks to all of our current donors, especially Pony Stark. Tweet me any theories or questions that you have about The Last Jedi at EA Voss. You can also follow New Rockstars on Twitter at New Rockstars for updates on our videos and some exciting things coming up on this channel. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.